Okay, hello, Mr. Priest. We are very pleased to meet you here in London. At first, you have written many books, but can you tell us a little about your last books? Mostly the books that are published in France.
Right. The most recent one is called, I can't remember the title in French. It's The Islanders.
No, just in English.
Yes, it's called The Islanders in English.
Yeah.
And it was a sort of return. I went 9 years without writing a novel. Various reasons, all sorts of different complications came along. One was I had a terrible experience with a publisher. And I sort of just got really fed up with the whole writing thing. And also the film with the Prestige was made. And although I wasn't involved with the Prestige film at all, it was very distracting. You know, you get emails from people saying like, "We think we can get Johnny Depp. Would you like Johnny Depp in the film?" I don't know. So that was very distracting, so it stopped me writing. And then about 3 or 4 years ago, I started again. And I wrote The Islanders, which came out this year from Lundonk. Hope later on it will come out from Folio. It's a novel about the Archipel de Grève, the Dream Archipelago. And it's about the people who live on the islands. I don't know if you're familiar with the Dream Archipelago, but it's an imaginary world. It's not a planet, it's just an alternate world. Well, there's literally millions of islands, an uncountable number of islands. And so the people who live there, it's basically art. It's about art, it's about music, it's about painting, it's about writing and that sort of thing. And I just think it's a sort of a fantasy paradise where everyone sort of sits around and gets drunk and has sex and sort of writes and then sits on the beach and watches the sea go in and out. But of course, always there's a snake in paradise. And so the book is about the snakes.
Well, The Highlanders, the book is written in a very special way. Can you tell us more about the way you have cut this book?
Okay, I've been writing about the Dream Archipelago for many years. And every now and then I do a short story and this island here and this happens there. And after a bit I got really confused. And I couldn't remember what I'd said. So I did on my computer, I did a spreadsheet. And I wrote down a column of every island I'd ever mentioned and what I knew about it and where it was in relation to the others and which story it appeared in and what the, you know, in a sense, what the rules were. And I thought, I'm going to publish that as a short story. Because, I don't know whether you remember, but there was a Ballard, J.G. Ballard wrote a short story called The Generations of America, which, you know, Lee Harvey Oswald shot John W. And, you know, millions of people shooting each other. And I thought, that's the kind of non-story I like. I'll do a story which is just a list of islands. And then I thought, no, I'm more interested than that. So I started writing, you know, Lonely Planet, a Lonely Planet guide, you know, when you go backpacking through Thailand, and you take a guide with you where the best restaurants are, the best beaches, and where you get laid, and where you can score drugs, and where you can take your children, and this sort of thing. And I thought, I'll do a guide to all the islands. So I started that, and that really amused me. And then I started getting interested in the people who live there, and so it became a novel. It just kind of grew, and I couldn't stop it.
Another book that is, for me, very important in my relationship with science fiction is Fugue for a Darkening Island.
Okay.
That is, you have rewritten it?
Yes. It was first published about 35 years ago. And it was my second novel. It's not very well written. It's I look at it now and it's very sort of unsubtle and I didn't like it. It's about a very difficult subject which has never gone away and it gets worse and worse, which is basically people in the third world having to leave their countries and trying to settle in the first world, in Europe, which of course is going on every day in Italy and Spain, and of course in England and France. It's a big problem. And 2 or 3 years ago, my French publisher said, we'll bring it out again. And so I had a look at the book, and I just didn't like it. So I thought, I'll rewrite it. I don't want to change the book, but I want to make it better. And so I did that, and I wrote a new introduction apropos the novel. And it's still there. It has a particular meaning in places like Australia. It's very strange. There was a film company in Australia wanted to film it because immigration is a big issue in Australia. I mean, it's got a coastline bigger than Europe. You know, people land there, and it's a big problem for them.
Let's go back in time and look at more globally at your work. For me, it seems about every book you've written is about reality, duality, different ways to look at the world. Is it really what is underneath your work, or am I wrong?
No, that's right. It's I'm never sure what's real. I'm always a bit worried about that. You see, but I've got a very clear hold on reality. What I see and taste and touch, I'm really happy with. That's real. The only trouble is, I'm not sure what other people think and what they see as real. And if you ever have any experience of people who've witnessed things and they have to discuss it, you find that they just completely see different things. And you still think, now, is that because they're wrong, or they weren't concentrating, or because, more interesting, perhaps they do see the world differently? When I see the colour yellow, is it the same colour yellow that you see? It's a simple example. So that's really the engine of the interest I have in that. What is it people see?
Yes, but you have gone very far with it.
Well, I've been doing it a long time.
Yes, because some of your books are completely focused on what you see is not real world.
Yes. Well, I mean, how it happens every day. When you, I don't know if you've ever been involved in a news story. Have you ever done anything where a newspaper has written about you, or you've seen yourself on TV, something like that? If you have, what you discover is they completely change it. It's always wrong. It's always different. And that's not because they're bad journalists or because they're evil or anything like that. It's because they perceive your reality very differently from the way you see it. And so I'm always very nervous of written accounts of something that happened. People describe this sequence. All my books are about narratives. They're about people telling stories of what happened. And then at the end you think, well, that's good. But then you read somebody else's narrative and you suddenly find that things are very different. The Prestige, for instance, yes. In the book, not the film, The Prestige consists basically of two narratives. But one, it's about two magicians. One tells his story, the other tells his story. They describe the same events, but each has a completely different understanding of what happened.
Yes, as you talk about The Prestige, can you explain us your relationship with filmmakers and?
Yeah, not very good.
Because one of your novels has been put in a film, and you took a film and make it a novel. So
I've done that too. Yeah. Yes. No, I did one of David Cronenberg's films, which I made into a novel, and I really enjoyed doing it. It was really funny, and the publisher sent the manuscript to Cronenberg, and his people said, "Mr. Cronenberg thinks it's not grim enough." And I said, "But it's really funny. You know, it had good jokes in it." And he said, "We want it more grim." So I had to rewrite this book, and so I did the whole thing. Every time I wrote a sentence, he said, I put comma, anxiously, or threateningly. That did it.
So we just talk a little about your past work.
Yeah.
What, if I may ask you that, what are the books or the ideas you are working on for now? What could we expect to have in France in the following years?
Well, next year there's a book coming out which is called in English The Adjacent. Now I've been told, my publisher's here, and he's told me that that title doesn't translate well. It's obscure. It's obscure in English, but it's very true. Adjacency is things next to each other, and there's a theory in quantum physics of adjacent worlds, where there's I think they sometimes call it the multiverse, where there are an infinite number of identical worlds, or almost identical, and the adjacent is about. It's actually a love story, but the background to it is that the scientists have come up with a way of entering the adjacent realm, and they're using it as a way of protecting cities. So if a missile comes in, they don't try and destroy it, they just divert it into an adjacent realm. And then they discover they could reduce it so that buildings could be protected, and finally people could be protected. So everyone's safe, except, of course, it's the Pandora's box. The secret gets out, and it becomes a weapon. You know, the people against us find a way of, kind of throwing you into another dimension. So it becomes a social and political problem, and that's the background to the story. And the story is basically a man who loses his wife, who's killed by one of these weapons, and what he does to try and find her.
This will come next year?
That's coming, it's just been translated. It will be published next year. And at the moment I'm working on a new novel which is called The Score, as in a musical score. Score. You know, when a composer writes a piece of music, it's called The Score. And this is a novel about a composer who writes a score. It's a bit more than that. I haven't finished yet.
No. I will thank you very much
okay.
to have
answered.
Yes,
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you.